Greeting, fellow creatives of the digital age. My name is Mara Gold, and I'll be your guide on today's writing journey. Welcome to the AI Writers Connections Cutting Edge Workshop. I'm thrilled to embark on this writing journey with you, a journey where we will step into the new age of writing, the era of AI revolution. It's an uncharted world, a realm that, for many of us, feels like a collision between past and future, between tradition and innovation. And yes, I understand there's an air of apprehension, a bit of uncertainty. You might be wondering, will AI snatch away our jobs? Will it replace us, the creatives? Will it be the end of the writing industry as we know it? As I've journeyed into this futuristic landscape of letters and algorithms, I've discovered a valuable lesson. AI is not the adversary. It's a writing aid. It's not sentient, self-aware, or capable of stilling the beautiful stories that live within every story writer across the globe. It's merely a tool that can organize your thoughts, assist in our research, and offer a blank canvas for our stories to come alive. The future of technology begins with you. So, are you ready?
Today, I want to talk about prompting and how you can take simplistic prompts and build upon those to be able to have it give you the content that you're looking for. Whether you are putting together a premise for a Highland romance, a Western, or you're doing hardcore sci-fi, think about the genre that you are in and think about some of the tropes and themes you might want to use within that specific framework. Without those tropes and themes, you really don't have a story. One thing that I've really heard a lot of authors from within the Discord that Cece and I are in, one thing that I'm hearing, a common thread, is that I have an idea. I've already fleshed out my body of work, but toward about the 2/3 section of the manuscript or the outline, I feel that the body falls flat. Maybe there's not enough at stake. Maybe there's not enough obstacles. Maybe there's a flaw in the way that the body of work has moved forward with the main plot. So those are some of the things that I want to talk about today, because if you don't have enough going on inside of your body of work, then you can't expect the AI to fully flesh something out. In a story, you do not have just one theme. You might have one reoccurring that you really want to focus on, but your story is more than just one theme. It's about more than just one trope. Your enemies to lover book might have alien contact in it. It might have a forbidden love in it. So all of these different tropes and themes are what is going to help you build a strong body of work. Today, I do want to touch upon using Claude as well as ChatGPT-4. I have been inside of Rexy, not for long, but I've been in there playing around. I still want to play with their word banger before I do a session on that content. So again, today I want to play around in Claude and ChatGPT-4. Before I get started, in the comments section, if you are having difficulty in a specific area within your outline, would you note where you think that difficulty is coming from? Is it in the premise stage? Are you having issues in the outline stage? Or are you having issues with the beats? Are you having an issue with the style that your prose is being generated in? If you'll list that in the comments section, we can actually have an open forum about that as we move forward. So I do tend to like to keep all of my content either inside of a pseudo-write page, or I will pull up a Vellum file and I will actually plug all of my content inside. Now, I do like to use Vellum, and I know that a lot of people like to use, say, Scrivener. One of the reasons why I really like to use the Vellum file is because it helps me to coordinate everything with little pages off to the side. So I'm actually going to pull that content up, and let me go ahead and pull that over for all of you to take a look at. So if I'm in Vellum, notice how I can have all of my pages out to the side. I can do the same thing with my chapters, and I can make notes. So one of the first things that I do whenever I am drafting a body of work, if I'm going to use my Vellum, I will start a brand new Vellum. I may not name it right away, but I will go in and pick out whatever type of format that I'm wanting to use. Since I have already generated content on middle grade, young adult, I've done a thriller, I've done a couple of other areas, urban fantasy, I thought that I would pick a genre that generally I do not write in, just so that you can see how the AI can help guide you. But before the AI can guide you, you are the one that has to provide the AI with all of the commands. So let me go ahead and grab this information right here. I am actually just transferring content over. And as you can see, as I am piecing together my content, and again, I know some people like to use Scrivener. A lot of people will use Pseudowrite. They'll use Notion pages. They will use a Word document. My daughter uses Atticus. So whatever method you like to use, make sure that you are paying attention to that content. Are there any specific types of information storage that people like to use? You can unmute yourself. Leland, what do you like to store your information in? If you are answering in the chat, I do not see it at this point.
I've used Google Docs before.
So what do you like about the functionality of Google Docs? Do you collaborate? Is that one of the reasons why you prefer or you like to use Google Docs?
I think it's that I can access it from any computer that I go to. So if I want to work at my desktop, I can work at my desktop. If I want to work at my laptop and take it somewhere, I can access it there. So it's just, I guess, that functionality, being able to move around.
Very nice. And that is a nice functionality. And if you do have a co-writer, then that's a good way for people to be able to go back and forth and share content. So let's go ahead and look at Scottish Highland. I'm actually wanting to look at a Scottish Highland that is a time travel. So I'm wanting to have some of that paranormal element inside of it. Again, I am not a Scottish Highland writer, so I will rely on some of the information that the AI provides. One of the things that I have noticed, if I am writing in a genre that I'm not familiar with, say I am writing a historical, or in this case, the Highland romance, I will ask whenever I'm writing prose for it to stay true to the vernacular and the social norms of the time. And I will give it a specific era to follow. Because if I don't do that, then the AI does not know what era to look at or what time frame. And depending on what was going on during that time frame or the area that you're looking at time-wise on the timeline, you could end up with, say, a wrong battle. You could end up with some scrimmages in the wrong place. So you want to make sure that you are paying attention to, one, where is your body of work located? Two, what was going on during that time frame? And three, making sure that you are having those conversations with the AI. Now, I am going to use a prompt that I have inside of the romance in the digital age. I'm going to start out simple and show you what you can do when you maybe have an idea of what you want to write, but rather than letting the template give you the whole concept, maybe you want to play around with a few different prompts, maybe a few different premises. So let's take a look at that. Right now, I am going to go into GPT-4, and I'm going to start out simple. I'm going to ask the AI or the LLM to write out 10 Scottish Highland premises with 7 to 10 tropes, 10 to 15 themes that wrap themselves around Highland time travel subgenre of the genre given, which is Scottish Highland. Now, this is a great way to take a look at something at an overview, just so that you know, one, do you like the information that's being given? Maybe I like elements in premise 1, but I want to mash it up with premise 2. Maybe there are some tropes or themes that are listed that I'm not crazy about, and I can ask the AI to remove some of those. So when y'all are looking at a story and you're looking to create a body of work, how much emphasis do you place on the genre and the subgenre? see. Yes, Leland, we can put the PDF where it can be grabbed. So as you can see, the LLM or ChatGPT-4 is giving me a very short premise, and then it's also giving me tropes. But a little bit down the road here, it's showing me trope and themes. It's telling me the premise is Piper's enchantment. But where's the actual premise? So this is when you have an LLM that has given you half of the information. I know the tropes and the themes, so you would want to ask, where are my premises? Again, the AI is not fail-proof. It can have hiccups.
It's cheating.
And there it goes again.
Oh, well, that's hilarious.
Themes before.
Claude's done that to me a couple times. This is the first time I've seen ChatGPT do this. That's hilarious.
I have never seen Chat do this. Now, I have been in a couple of other LLMs. I think it's called Llama. I was in there and it did something very similar to me. So I guess it's not really cheating. It's just saying, okay, I gave you those before. It would have been nice if it had given me all of it together.
So do you,
Like robot.
Mira, do you usually just go with the whole thing? Because I mean, for me, whenever I'm doing these interviewing stuff, I tend to cherry pick. Oh, I like this. I like that. I like this. And I pull it all together by hand.
So I like the thought that we have some ancient rituals. We have a guardian spirit and a brewing clan war. I like that. So I'm actually going to go in and, like you said, I'm going to cherry pick a few items. Now, do I do this always whenever I am going in to find a story? No. Often I'll sit there and I'll think about a story, or somebody will say something and it will spark a thought. And then I will go ahead and move from there. But in this case, if I'm just brainstorming, truly brainstorming like this, I'll go in and ask the LLM that I'm in. Now, one of the things that I like about this one is that there's a Highland game. I don't read a lot of Highland bodies, but I have read a few in my day, and I have watched some Highland romance or some movies in the past. I like the thought of having some Highland games and an athlete finding herself in that, reliving that day over and over again, that thought, and a day from centuries ago where the age-old vendetta began. I want to take elements of this, and I would like to go ahead and have it mix with this content here. Now let's pick and see what else we see. Now she could have a legacy. Ooh, there's a magical falcon, but I'm not sure if I want a magical falcon in there. Has anybody else seen something that they like? A botanist wakes up in a different era. So let's see, a guardian spirits in a brewing clan war. Let's see where we can add. We'll say the events that unlock her own legacy. So let's take a look at this. Participating in the Highland Games, an athlete finds herself reliving the same day over and over, a day from centuries ago, where an age-old vendetta began, and where she might be the key to its resolution, and mix it with ancient. So I want to mix this with ancient rituals. So let's start it. Let's start this. Do we want to start this in modern day and have her go back to the past, or have her in the past going forward? If we have her in the present going back, she could be an MMA fighter. She could actually have some really good skill when she goes back. Present to past. Okay, so let's start this in modern day and flow into the past. And we are going to mix it with ancient rituals. Now, keep in mind, we have quite a bit of information here already. We also have those tropes and those themes that would apply to the different premises that we were given. So I am going to ask the LLM to provide me with a new list of tropes and themes that encompass this body. I'm going to ask it to write the early synopsis.
What's the difference between an early synopsis and regular synopsis?
So an early synopsis, I'll start with a premise, and then I will start with my early synopsis. My early synopsis is what I look at before I have fully fleshed it out. My early synopsis is generally going to be lacking some details. It's not going to have all of the twists, turns, and reversals that my body of work is actually going to need. So one of the things that I like to do is evaluate that early synopsis to ensure that I have enough in it to sustain my story. And that one step that I take from my early synopsis to the extended is what tends to help me build my body of work, because I don't see this as a 9-chapter, 10-beat story. I see this as maybe a 25 to 30 chapter body of work with, say, beats that could be anywhere from 10, 12, or 14 beats per chapter. And in order to sustain a body of work that long, I have to make sure that there's enough information in my book to be able to fill all that information in. And if I don't have enough, then I'm going to start seeing a lot of vague content or a lot of repeats. And that's one of the things that if your LLM sees some of that, or there's a lot of repeats, it just gets in that little loopy mode where everything that is spit out is so vague that it doesn't really tell a story or show the story unfolding. So as you can see, it gave me my tropes, and this Groundhog Day loop, that's pretty popular. Whether you are writing a script or a book, you will find that frequently. Definitely a fish out of water. Some of these you may even use without even realizing that you have layered them into your body of work. So each one of these items help me to build a robust story. Without them, my story would fall flat. Now, one of the questions that you might want to ask are, let's see, I think I typed one up, and I will share these questions with you. You might be wondering, why are the tropes and themes important? Let's ask. So again, they provide depth and that connection and it helps readers resonate with the story. So your tropes, even though some people say, no, tropes are really cliched. I need something new. I need something fresh. One of the things that you have to remember is that your tropes are going to be familiar. That's what helps your reader connect to it. Even though that trope has been used time and time again, it's not always the same story. And why is it a different story? Because you put your original thought into that body of work, or you prompt an LLM to push that story forward. It also helps to communicate and convey information that a reader is familiar with. If they have ever read any type of Highland romance, then they may actually be familiar with some of these tropes. Having that familiar comfort level enables a reader to be able to relax into a body of work that they're reading. They want to be entertained. They don't want to live the same life that they have day in and day out. Again, they want to be entertained. They want a book to take them away from their everyday life. So again, your themes, it adds depth and resonance. It has a unified direction. It ensures that the threads of your book stay cohesive, and it ties various elements of your story together. And that togetherness is not the together that the AI likes to do and having everybody do stuff together. Not that kind of togetherness, but it does keep all of that content moving forward. If one of the stories, and I know it's outside of Highland, but one of the stories that you can think about some of the themes in would be, say, Silence of the Lamb. If you are a thriller writer, if you are a coming of age story, you might look at some of the Divergence or the Maze Runner. So again, think about the books that you're reading or that you want to write, and what kind of themes you have seen in some of the bodies of work that you have read that you like. This is a huge one. Your themes and all of your tropes impact your character's development. So if this is a forbidden romance, then your character is going to be impacted by that. There might be rules and guidelines that this person has to follow. Maybe there's a treaty in place. Maybe it's the Hatfields and McCoy. Maybe it's like a Romeo and Juliet type of situation where families have been feuding for years, for generations. Again, think about how they can impact your characters. Think about the art. Think about the themes that you are layering into your body and how it impacts your story. And then it also impacts your world building. Your world must have rules, some norms, culture, traditions. If it is a historical body, then it must have historic events, whether you make some of those up or you base it upon some true to life event. you still need to make sure that you're giving it that historic feel to it. And you want to stay true to a degree, especially if it is something that is emulating a time from the past. You want to make sure that somebody reading it can feel that they are there during that time frame. You want them to be taken back to that era. And it's important to know what were the social challenges during that time, not only for your female character, but for your male character as well. So now that we have our early synopsis, we know some of our tropes and themes, we're going to take a look at this. Maura she's a top tier athlete. She's always had a deep connection to her Scottish roots, and she's invited to participate in the Highland Games. I think this is interesting and I like it, but I need a little bit more context. So what year is it for her? We know that it is modern day, so we want to make sure that the AI understands that this starts out in modern day, and then we need to know what time frame that she actually travels back into. So that's one of the questions that we need to ask the AI. Now, do I have to ask for dates that relate to important historical events? No. But I do having that option. Does it mean that I have to use those? No. I can build around that if I want to, but it at least gives me a starting point, especially since I'm not familiar with this specific genre. If I wanted to do more research as a reader and as a writer, I would want to go in and read about that, understand it better. I could even ask the LLM to provide me with more detailed information. So here it's letting me know when it's the mid 18th century, key dates, 1750. So I know that I can pick 1715. Now, one of the things that just jumped in my head just now, what if I didn't want this to just be a single book? What if I want this to be serialized? Or what if I want to have multiple books? What if this is going to be a story that takes place against multiple timelines, and maybe each book is a timeline, and maybe her love interest is somebody who is trying to help her get back to her time, and maybe he travels with her. So this is one of the ways that I start looking at a novel whenever I am fleshing it out with AI. So I like the thought of maybe having her go back and forth in time. So we know she's starting out in present day. We know that book 1, she is in some type of games that's going to send her into the past. Now, I wonder what the AI would come up with if I asked the AI to say that suggestion number 1 needs to be rolled into my early synopsis, but to hold on to suggestion 2 and 3 to use those for books 2 and 3. So what I've asked is I'd like to make this a series, take number 1 and wrap it into the early synopsis, then take number 2 and 3 and create premises for book 2 and 3 using the same characters. Now I can give it parameters right here. I can tell it that I want the beginning of book 1 and the end of book 1 to mirror one another. Or I could ask for the beginning of book 1 has her in modern day. I could have the end of book 1 actually end in an area where she is automatically going to be catapulted into the next story. So I can make it do one of two ways. I think I would like to have each book feed into the next. And if I want this to be more like a serialized platform, I could end each one of these books or these seasons with a cliffhanger. Now, if I'm going to be publishing these, say, on Amazon as ebooks or wide with, say, iBooks or Google Play or going through a Draft to Digital or any other vendor, I would want to make sure that I know who my audience is. If I'm on a serialized platform, then yeah, I can end it with each book with a cliffhanger so that the reader knows that I'm pushing them to the next season. But if I am on Amazon and the readers expect to have that nice, happy feeling at the end, then I need to prepare them. If I'm going to have the couple go all the way from book 1, from the beginning, page 1, to the end of that book, I need to wrap up that specific story of the games, have them go through hell and back again, and then at the very end, at least give them a happy for now ending. And I would do that because I would not want readers to be upset with a cliffhanger. And again, that is subjective for you as a writer. From my personal experience with other genres, I tend to like to give my ebooks a happy for now or happy ever after ending. Since I want 3 books at least with this body of work, then I would have a happy for now. And then book 2 would send the couple to a new time frame with a whole new list of things that they're having to take care of. And then once that ended, it would catapult them into the next book. But again, ebooks, I would end with a happy for now for book 1 and 2. Book 3, I would end it with that happy ever after. Now, again, if I was on a serialized platform, I would want to make sure that my story had cliffhangers at the end of each season. And let's equate a book to a season. By the time that book or season ended, I would have a cliffhanger, which in a television show where the season is ending and you have that climatic scene where everything is just blowing up and you don't know what has happened to your character, I would end that first season of my body of work. I would end it like that, letting the readers know that it is kicking off the next season. But again, know who your audience is. So let's see what it gives us now. So again, it is starting out stating that she is a top athlete. She has deep connections to her Scottish roots. It is letting us know that she is partaking. It has picked 17, and it is going to drop her right into the action there. We know that there's a key figure from one of the clans that's going to play a crucial role. What role is that? We know that there's an old vendetta. So is this going to be the antagonist or does that become a love interest? Now, because of what we've done, we need to expand that early synopsis. We need to know more about our story. So let's go ahead and ask. And as you can see, while it's answering that, let's go look. So book 1, we see that it is Highland Echoes. We have an early synopsis. We have a premise for Highland Shadows book 2, which lets us know that her newfound love, that they believe that they've settled the vendetta, but they're trying to build their life together. However, the ripple effect of their actions send them off into a new story. So again, think about how the events in one book will impact your next. How does the storyline of book 1 impact book 2? Book 3, what is your overreaching arch between all 3 books? Yes, I agree with that, Leland. I think having some threads open from book 1 that go all the way across the arc of all 3 books, I think that is a really good way to do it because you have not only the individual books that you're working, but yes, to your point, you have an overreaching thread or multiple threads that may go across all the books. So here we have the love interest. We know who the antagonist is. Now, one of the things that we don't know is the antagonist going to be the same person all the way through each book, or is there going to be a new antagonist for each book? Now, again, these are just the preliminary stages, what I'm doing whenever I'm plotting. And I do like to know where my story is going. I know a lot of pantsers will start out with a little bit of information about their story. They might know who their character is, or they might know the world that they want to build, and they may start with very minute information and then build from there. But even if you're a pantser, when you sit down, before you ever type a word, you still know somewhat of a direction that you want to take when you sit down to type. You may have to have some pauses in between to think about what direction to go next. But using the AI, I can definitely see how that would be really helpful for a pantser to maybe a chapter at a time, if that's the way that they work. Or if you are a plotter going in and doing something very detailed from day 1 and going from the very beginning of your concept to every single beat of your story. So here we have our antagonist of book 1. We have the antagonist listed for 2, and we know who it is in book 3. If you notice that they all have the same last name, so there's going to be some type of a connection. We know that there are ancient rituals and dark arts, so we know that some of that hands down throughout each one of the books. So let's ask, what important weave across the 3 arcs concept structure? So again, these are things to consider when you are writing a series. Now, if this were a standalone, you would not have to worry about asking these specific questions. But if you truly want to have a series and have your readers come back to continue to read about those characters, make sure that you are fleshing out your arc threads as well as the threads within your individual book. So now that we have this information, let's play with it a little bit more. I'm going to refresh its memory. I'm going to tell it to please review all details, then write out the early synopsis for book 1. Now, look at all the stuff that it has given me about my specific book when it comes to the 3 art series. It is giving me information about the legacy. Now, does that mean that's all that I need for the legacy? No. That means that is a starting point. I am going to dig down really deep into this content because each one of these, those are going to be some of the obstacles that my character has to overcome. Looking at the vendetta, looking at the culture and traditions. If you were living in modern day and you got dumped into the 18th century, things would be so vastly different. Would you know what the culture and the traditions were of that time? How much of a fish out of water would you feel like? So all of these are going to come into play across all of the books, and you're going to see them sprinkled throughout. Your symbols and your motifs are important as well. So let's take a look at book 1. While that is generating, I'm going to go and grab this prompt right here. You will actually see this prompt inside of the PDF that I will share with y'all. It is the Highland romance, the Scottish Highland romance time travel template. Now, if I were to run this template just by itself, it would actually give me a story. But I can also flesh something out like I did today and actually have it give me something more cohesive in the way that I want to see the story done. To test that or show you, I'm going to actually go into Claude and show you how you can actually have it give you this content inside of Claude. Same way that you would actually do this inside of Chat. Again, I'm going to ask it, in this case, to write out the following story concept synopsis. Please generate in a non-JSON format. I'm going to ask it to give the characters names and provide a setting and time/era. And that's all that I'm going to tell it. And then I'm going to send it off. And as you can see, it did give me something. I could go in and I could go through and I could flesh this whole thing out. And this is another way to brainstorm and look at things. You can add details to it. But I really like starting a concept with an idea that I might mash up together. So let's go back into Chat. And here's our Highland Echoes again. Again, she is the athlete. We have the information that's showing in a race against time. She and her love interest must bridge the past and the future. So one of the things that I like to do, now that Chat has all this information, I'm going to go back and grab another prompt. This prompt is going to evaluate the current synopsis, and I'm going to ask it to evaluate it, look for strengths, weaknesses, vague or problem areas. And why do I do that? Because it gives me an open window to talk to the AI. That way, if there's anything that maybe needs to be clarified, or maybe I haven't made it clear to the LLM, then I can take care of that here. Now, if you notice in my evaluation, I've also asked for key information on my characters to be listed. I want them to have a first and last name. I want them to have ages. We've already identified the protagonist, but I'm asking for that information again, even for the love interest, the antagonist, or any antagonistic force. And I want those body features, those attributes. And the other thing that I'm going to ask for, in addition to the Myers-Briggs personality types, I want 10 minor characters using those archetypes. And why do I ask for those? Because in every book, every movie that you watch, you know that there are specific characters that fill the space. You have the mentor. In a cozy, you might have the nosy neighbor. In the sci-fi, say Star Wars, Anakin had a mentor. So again, think about your characters. Think about some of those archetypes that would be important to your characters. So in asking it to refine the synopsis, it went ahead and provided some similar information here. It is letting me know the ages. It's letting me know that he is actually a chieftain. It's given me his hair color. Now, am I going to put that where every single chapter that's being generated is going to pull that? No. I'd be okay with it showing up maybe once or twice, but I don't want it all over my manuscript. So I'm going to be very careful where I store that information. So why do I ask for all this information early on? Because I want to know who my character is. And by specifying the Myers-Briggs, I find that helps me as a writer be able to direct the AI, because I understand the Myers-Briggs personality types. If you use Enneagram or something else, by all means, stick to those. Stick to what you are comfortable with. Now, why do I use these descriptor words? Because at a quick glance, when I'm looking at my content, I know that those words will describe my character. It can impact my character's voice, the tone, maybe their body language. If they are adaptable, then that means that this individual, if dropped in the middle of just chaos, can adapt, can find a way to blend in, can find a way to succeed within that area. Now, weaknesses, she's impulsive. So that's interesting, since she's adaptable, but she's also impulsive. So that could make for some really interesting scenes to unfold. We know that our love interest is 29. We know that he has had personal tragedies. I don't know what those tragedies are. Does the AI? Probably not. That would be my job to find out what these tragedies are. Because if I don't understand where my character has come from and what has made my character who he or she is, then how can I predict how my character is going to act? So those are all things that I need to actually know and flesh out. Here is our antagonist. Now, why do I do this level for my antagonist? Because my antagonist is an important character. Your antagonist is not just the bad guy. Often there's a reason for your antagonist to be the way that he or she is. Make that person grounded. Sometimes a character can grow and have positive growth. Sometimes they can have negative growth, but you don't want your antagonist to be flat. Here are my 10 minor characters. And as you can see, we have the jester, we have the mentor, we have the outlaw, we have the guardian, the everyman, and the caregiver. All of these individuals weave in and out of your character's life, and they help to make that world that you're building have some shape or form, because they can actually weave and help you weave some of that tension, help you move your plot forward. Right here, you have a sage, a seer who provides cryptic prophecies. So what does that even look like? That would have to be fleshed out. It's a cool concept, but right now in these early stages, I have no idea what that means. But if I don't flesh that out later, the LLM is not going to understand that either. And I might end up with something that I may not be happy with. Now, one of the next things that I'm going to do, remember, I'm still fleshing this out. I'm going to write a major character list I know we already have one, but I'm going to do this one more time. And why am I going to do that? Because I just added additional detail. I'm going to ask it to go back and look at the early concept, which you see right here. I'm asking the LLM to go back to the early concept. And I want it to extract any and all information. Now I am going to go down to number 4 once that's finished. And another reason to ask for that list again is because I fleshed it out once. We have information that may be housed in your early synopsis. And then in some of the questions that I asked about the arc and about the antagonists and some of the other historic details, there might be characters in there that need to be pulled forward. So we have, if you notice, there's a little bit more information now listed with me asking it to go back and look. No, I actually use the bulk of these characters throughout. And I do that because my 10 characters that I pulled, they may just be coming in and out. They are just those side characters. Maybe it is a character who brings food. Maybe it is a character who is giving the prophecies. Maybe there's a guard in there. There's a mentor. So again, each one of those characters, I want to specify who those characters are in that scene because I don't want to leave it open-ended to the LLM for the AI to take liberties and bring in characters of its own. So I'm going to specify which characters I want in my book. My minor characters, there's more detail in here. It's also giving me a relationship. I know how these people relate to my main character. Now, if you're reading a Highland romance, or say you're reading as a hardcore sci-fi with an ensemble cast, you know that you're going to have more than just 2 or 3 characters. So that's why I like to have a cast of characters that I can bring into my body of work. It doesn't mean that they share a big bulk of the airtime with my main character. It's just that they come in and out. So once I get to this stage, one of the things that I like to do, I know a little bit about the backstories of my characters. Remember, I pointed that out earlier when we first did a character list. It gave me like a single sentence about what some of the backstory was. And remember, the love interest had something tragic happen to him, but I don't know what that was. The LLM doesn't know what that is right now. And if I tried to write that story right now, it would be vague. It would be left unanswered. I am going to ask the LLM to write out a detailed backstory. Now, could I provide it my own backstory? Yeah, I can. If I want to play with the LLM, I can ask the LLM to give me suggestions or options. And that's one of the things that I find is really beneficial with working with the AI. You can bounce things around. Setting the scene, historic fantasy set in Scottish Highland in the 1740s and present day. It's going to be a blend of history and fantasy elements visible through the narrative. If we take a look at it, it is now giving me more of her backstory. Anything that is inside of this backstory that I might have a question about, then I would want to expand that. Now, she never knew her parents. Why? Did they die before she was born? Was she given up for adoption? Were her parents incarcerated? Did they go missing? I don't know any of that, but those would be questions that I would be asking the LLM. I would need to know why her parents were not there. Why was she raised by her grandmother? What about a grandfather? Was there no grandfather? It might seem like a lot of information, but I need to know this information because it helps me know my character. We do know that the love interest has grown up as the heir to the Fraser clan. We know that there are expectations, things that he must do or adhere to. Maybe he's a reluctant hero. At this point, I don't know. He was mentored in the arts of diplomacy and combat from a young age, so we know all this about him. Now, one of the things that I'm curious about with her, earlier I had talked about maybe adding in an element of her being an MMA fighter in the present day. That is something that I can still weave in. Remember, she's athletic by nature. So I'm going to make sure that she's a title. That means that she is renowned in her area. This is really vague. I would want to flesh this out more as well. Now, we do know that this Fraser changed at one point. I believe this was a different name. We'd have to scroll up to look. And our antagonist has always had the same last name. We know that he was born into his clan. He was not the direct heir. So a thirst for power and recognition has spurred him on. But I feel like we need to know more. Why is he spurred on? Did something happen to him when he was younger? I don't know. I do know that there are encounters with dark arts and forbidden lore that give him an edge. Who taught him that? Was it a family member? Did he have a mentor that taught him all this? How did he end up getting wrapped up in the dark arts? And why is it such an issue for him to not be the direct heir? And if he's not the direct heir, who is? And has that person been killed? And if so, is the antagonist have a hand in that? So again, think about all the different things that you can wrap into your story, because that's what's going to make it solid. Even our supporting characters, you're going to have a little bit of backstory on them that you might want to actually pull out and read more about. Now, I do know that number 2, this is a childhood friend of the love interest, and this individual, Ferguson, is the lighter side of things, and he's also skilled in combat. So again, think about how your characters play together. We now have a town. We have information about the town, and we also have myth, lores, and legends that we can wrap into the body of work. Now, in interest of time, because I know that time is getting away from us here, not going to flesh every single one of these out, but if I were taking this to a fully fleshed out story, I would want to know what kind of spells are forbidden. Is it only blood spells? What constitutes a forbidden spell? Are all spells forbidden? If so, then is a seer's ability to have visions acceptable, or is that forbidden as well? Or is it only accepted in the clan when the chieftain is the one who is receiving the information? I would want to know what the rules of that world look like. So I'm just going to add this little piece in here. It might rewrite some content on her, and that's okay. Now, in this storyline, because we are going to continue the story, one thing that you always need to keep in the back of your mind is that when you get to the end of, say, your chapter outline or all of your chapters, when you are creating your story beats, you want to make sure that those last couple of chapters will move your story in the direction of having that happy for now ending for an ebook, or that cliffhanger if you're writing a serialized body, so that you can slowly ease the reader into understanding that there's going to be a part 2. So with this step, I do have a character list. We have played with it. We have some backstory information in there, probably some information that we really need to flesh out if we were taking this forward. And there are a few other things that I want now, but I'm going to have it generate my outline. Now, one of the things that I like to do for my outlines is ensure that I'm not just going to ask it for an outline. No, I need it to have some primary beats. And I find that if I have an outline and I ask it to give me primary beats to each one of the chapters, say 5 to 6 of those, then it's a lot easier to flesh my story out from beginning to end. Now, if you use Story Engine, you would have to change each one of these to an A. If you were using Rexy really doesn't get confused with that, I have found, but either way, you can use A, B, C, or you could just leave them unlisted. Now, why do I have the X's here? Because I am giving the LLM the AI that's writing with me, I am giving it a format that I want to see my content. One, I want it to list my chapter. I want it to have the POV of each chapter, and I could list that it could have 14 beats, 10 beats, but I do want it to list the character POV. And I do that because if it lists the character POV and I'm alternating between male and female, then I will know which chapter is hers and which one is his. Now, how many of y'all have often wondered, how many chapters should my book be? One of the things that you can do is you can actually ask the LLM that question. So before I actually send this one off into chat, we're going to ask chat right here. Let's see, are they usually first or third, past or present tense? Do they alternate? What details can you tell me? Now, I would not ask this question until you have actually fleshed out your body of work more. As you can see, typically these novels range 300 to 450 pages, translates to 20 to 30 chapters. But again, it's telling you that the exact numbers can vary. The point of view, you can use first or third person. You can use single versus multiple POV, and it gives you an explanation, and it talks about tense. Now, we can also ask about vernacular. What is the best way to direct an AI to ensure that it has vernacular of the era? Are there any questions?
I'm not seeing any in the chat.
Okay, y'all are a quiet bunch. So if you take a look at it, it's letting me know that most point of views are going to be first or third. Both are used, but third limited is slightly more common, and it allows for a broader perspective. So if I wanted to write to market, then I would go out and look at some of the bodies of work that are in this specific area of interest, and then I would go ahead and read those. Hi, Angie. I need to ask the LLMs more questions. Harper, I ask them so many questions, and I just keep going back and forth. Again, looking at the POVs, I'd probably go ahead and pick third person, and I would do past tense. And I would want to do those alternating POVs. And looking at the details and features, I need to make sure that I'm paying attention to that. Now, most of these are going to be sweet with maybe minimal explicit content. So I know that I don't have to use a spicier LLM for this. I could probably get away with using maybe ChatGPT-4, maybe even Claude if I have more of a closed door. Both of those models will write with some sexual tension that will bode well with this era. So here I asked it, what POV do you think would be best? And it's letting me know third person limited. And it's giving me a reason why.
Mira, do you bounce between the LLMs? Because, for example, would you use GPT-4 or Claude to do the primary approach generation for the closed door style, and then go over to one of the LLMs to get the spicier and to expand the spicy sections? Or,
Okay. I tried if I wanted to. Yeah.
or would you just generate the
try
whole thing from the other LLMs? So how have you experimented with that?
I have. So one of the very first books that I wrote inside of an LLM, my first experience was with ChatGPT-4, and I wrote 2 books and 3 scripts inside of GPT-4. 3.5 at the time. It was 3, and then it migrated to 3.5. At the time, I was just blown away by 3 and by 3.5. Without even realizing, once 4 came out, my mind was blown again, because then I realized how vague 3.5 was and how much I had to wrestle with it. But yeah, so I have written in 3.5, I've written in 4, I have written content inside of Claude as well. I really like Claude, I'd say, for middle grade and young adult. I like it for some comedy content as well. say, chick lit or a rom-com, I do the creativity that Claude gives me. But if I am going to write something that I need it to stay on task with the beats, then I'll probably go to GPT-4 because it will stay on task. And if I'm writing, say, a script, one of the last scripts that I wrote was a musical, which was The Godfather meets Phantom of the Opera. So I mashed the ideas and put it together. And I actually used some of ChatGPT-4 to flesh out the whole concept, all of the beats for all 30 of my chapters. And each chapter had about 16 beats. That was all done inside of GPT-4. But then I took that into another LLM, which at the time was Story Engine, and had it right. I pulled it out of there once I was finished, did all my edits and all of my evaluation that I did inside of GPT-4, because I like the way that it will evaluate scripts. And it also provided me with a really good bird's eye view of the gaps that I was missing. And then anything that I needed to write additional, I wrote inside of GPT-4. So given the methodology, which relies pretty heavily on the LLMs to create character names, story synopsis, book titles, do you run a prompt or a web search to check whether or not the details are original, as opposed to lifting it from an existing work? So one of the things that I do, I write pretty consistently with Grammarly turned on when I'm doing edits. To date, I have not had it hit anything. When I run Grammarly, I generally, even on my handwritten content, I will hit generally about a 1%, because there are certain phrases or sayings or cliches that it can hit. But yeah, I've not had an issue with that. Now, keep in mind, I will run this content. I will go back and forth with the LLM, and I have provided information. If you remember back to the premise, and I grabbed different elements from the different premises, and I mashed those together. And then I have asked it to pick 3 different timelines. I'm going to have it weave in and out of those timelines. So I have contributed to the content that's in there. Now, once I start fleshing out my chapter outline, I'm going to add more details in there. And then once I flesh out all of my chapter beats, which would probably be about 14 beats per chapter, I'm going to weave in my own content in there along with what the LLM is putting in there. And that's why it takes so long, because I have those conversations going back and forth. Remember, my girl is going to be an MMA fighter. And so I'm going to be adding elements of that as the story goes on. And because this storyline has an element of games, I'm going to have to construct and see what the games look like during that time frame, and then how I'm going to incorporate her skills along with those that she is fighting with. Robert, have you seen issues with any of your work when you're pulling up? I can tell you the only area that I have seen issues with when I'm playing around with premises is in Claude. So if you ask Claude to give you, say, 10 premises, and you tell it you want it to be from sci-fi, you want it to be a sci-fi space opera, you have to be really careful, because if you don't tell it that you want original content, then it could spit out some movie log lines. So that's the one LLM that I've been very careful of playing around with like that, because that one will give you published premises or log lines. To get away from that, what you need to do is tell Claude that you want original content.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I use Claude almost exclusively. And the other day I asked it for a premise for a military thriller, and it spit out the main character's name was Jack Ryan, and it involved a nuclear submarine, which if I didn't already know the genre, that would have been a lift.
Angie just posted something. Make sure that you're using that prompt, because that prompt says, ensure these premises are all original, non-published, and non-produced concepts. And tell the LLM, I only want original content. I have not found that issue inside of GT4, and I did not find it inside of Llama, but I didn't play in there long enough. And I've not found that issue inside of Jasper at all, but I have found it inside of Claude. So I'm very careful when I play with Claude. I am going to tell the LLM that I now want it to give me an outline, but I'm going to want it to pay attention to everything that we have done up to this point. Now, remember from the questions that we had that I asked, it said it could be 25 to 30. So if I want this to be a longer body, what I'm going to do is tell it that I want it to be a 30 chapter, and I am going to name the genre. And the reason why I keep putting it there is because we all know that the LLMs forget things sometimes. And I want it to create a chapter by chapter outline. I do tend to fall back on Blake Snyder. That is one of the first templates that I learned to use in novel writing. And then I also learned to use it in script writing. So because I'm familiar with it, I tend to still use it today. I also like to mash it up with the Lester Dent mystery template, and that's what works for me. Now, if you like something else, use something else. If you have created your own template, then I would recommend that you provide the LLM with an example of how you want to see things formatted. And if you notice, I will ask it to give me 5 beats in numbered form, and those are my primary beats per chapter. Now, I can ask for 5 or I can ask for 6. Now, if I am actually going to ask for, say, 12 or under, then I might go ahead and keep it at 5 beats. Maybe even if I'm at 14 or 16, I might keep it at the 5 beats. But if I want to go, say, 16 beats or greater per chapter, then I would go ahead and use either 6 or 7 primary beats, just so that you know that your chapter summary is going to be meaty enough to sustain that many beats. Now, I am going to ask for there to be a description for the setting, the tone, and location in brackets. I want it to provide me the time of day without repeating any beats. I do want to see some guardrails, or at least let it wrap it in there. One of the important things is to know the time that has passed. I need to know the day, and I need to know the time of day, because there's nothing worse than starting a chapter and it's sunny, and then all of a sudden the next stride, it's nighttime, and then the next one, it's midday, and everything feels out of chronological order. By directing the AI to give you that up front, you alleviate that issue. And again, I'm reminding it that I want the day, the time of day, and the characters in each scene and the setting and location. And that's what this information here tells it how I want it formatted. Now, again, before I would do this, I would fully flesh out that synopsis. Now, it will let you know that due to time, the constraint of the space or the words, it can only give me so much, and then I will have to go ahead and prompt to get additional. One of the things that I do like about seeing this information up front is, one, I know the day, I know the time, I know the characters involved, I know who they are, I know the location, I know what my character's tone of voice is, and I know the overall tone of the story. Now, one other thing that you could add here if you wanted to, you could ask it to add the trope. You could ask it to add a theme or the symbolism or the motif. But keep in mind that content should be wrapped up inside of your beats. Notice how my beats have action. This one would be, number 7 would be maybe one of the ones that has the least action, because she's shaking it off but feels an odd connection to the warrior. That I would flesh out further, because I need action there. The LLM does better when you give it an actual action to follow. Same thing here. If she is recalling her grandmother's tales of time travel, what is she recalling about it? That's too vague. You need to either handwrite that, or you need to ask the LLM to specify what the grandmother's tales were about. If the pendant in number 3 is important, then describe what it looks like. If you don't care, then the first time it's described, then you need to write that down in somewhere so that you know what it looks like, so that halfway through the book, it doesn't turn from a sapphire to a ruby. So make sure that you're paying attention to content like that. So I don't feel that the beats here have enough action. So what I would do is tell the LLM, and I would ask it to avoid introspection. I want there to be external movement or conflict. Now, you can be short like that and give it direction, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to give you everything that you asked for. It will give you more detail, but if you want something extremely specific, then I would go in and edit those beats, but make sure that they are all active. If you can't describe something in action or tell the LLM that it's active and actually see what that action would look like, then the LLM might get confused. So make sure you're giving it action. So if the training session ensues, what does that training look like? We know that she's an MMA fighter, so we could expand to number 10 more if we wanted to. Does that help? Any questions about working with your outline and your beats? Now, if you are curious what this might look like, we can actually ask it to write some of the beats. So let me go look for a template. Give me just a minute here. And are y'all interested in maybe having the thread for this so that y'all can maybe pull the thread out and take a look at it from ChatGPT-4, the link? Okay, I can definitely share that with you.
That's a resounding yes in the chat.
Okay. Now, this is a framework that I use quite frequently, and notice that this is for an urban fantasy. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this, and let me put that over here, because I'm going to put two of them together. And let's go ahead and let's see what this one has. That is wrapping up the chapter. Has the outline, the characters, beats, and let's see. Actually, let's use this one. And I will share this with you as well.
Do you edit this JSON by hand or do you have it generated for you?
I do a lot of it by hand, and then I will send it back into the basic structure. I will do by hand, and then I will take it to GPT-4, and then I will play with it. Now, what I'm going to show you right now is the easiest way to take it. Now, keep in mind, it's urban fantasy. I'm going to show you how to make this framework work for you. One of the things that I do, if you notice on this one, I said, keep in mind the current story in the framework. I'm asking it to wrap it around and change it. Now, I'm not going to go in and change all of this manually, but I can ask the LLM to do it. Now, if I'm building a brand new framework, then yes, it's a very manual, and I will do that usually inside of a Word document. So let's go back into our chat. Now I'm going to come back up here. I'm telling it to keep in mind the current story. I want you to change and convert this framework into a framework. I'm repeating the word twice, that I can use for a single chapter. Now, you could do it for a single chapter. You could do it for all of his POV or all of her POV, or you could do it for the whole book. But I like to wrap it per chapter. Now, keeping in mind the current story, I'm going to remind it that it is a Scottish Highland time travel. And I'm telling the LLM that I want it to change it with the subgenre, and I want the story of the characters' names. Now, I could come in here and I could list their names, but the LLM should actually grab my characters' names. Now, I am going to erase Laura and her love interest from here. And you could, if you want to ensure that it's not going to get confused in your Word document, you could replace names this way. But I've really never had issues with it confusing the names. when I have this direction in there. Knock on wood. And I'm going to tell it nope. And I'm going to ask it, please wrap all story content, all the current story content into the framework and strip out all UF romance details. Now, sometimes you do run into this. Not always, but sometimes you do. And there you go. And it gave me my characters' names. It's letting me know that I want additional story details. Now, do you see up here where it says internal thoughts? If you don't want them to have a lot of internal thought, then mark that true to false. If there's anything in here that you do not want it to do that's a true, you can mark it a false. If you want the plot progression to not be gradual, put another word in there. If you don't want the setting detail level high, put it to a medium. Now, why do I wrap this content in this way? I wrap it because if I use the same template all the way across all 30 chapters, then I might get some repeat information, how like we're all in it together phrasing. But if I wrap the single chapter into each one of these, then it helps me be able to ensure that it's only looking at one chapter at a time. Now, I am going to ask it, is this for only chapter 1? If not, revise. I don't think I told it up here that I want it only for chapter 1. Let's see. So here I told it that I need it for chapter 1. Now, once this gets done, what I would do is I would copy this, and then I would plug that into my message area. And then I would grab either the first beat or the first 2 beats and ask ChatGPT-4 or Claude to write this for me. And again, I do apologize for the length of the class. I wish I could pull this out further so y'all could see that. But it goes back. One of the things that I really like about this is that it begins to wrap some of the finer details of that chapter into the template. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I'm going to paste it down here. So I am going to go ahead and grab my first chapter, but I'm only going to grab it to the first 2 beats. And one of the things that I notice whenever I first start doing this and I'm writing the story, it can be really vague at first. But then after I do it for a while, it picks up that pattern of what I'm looking for, and it will almost intuitively continue to give me the fleshed out prose that I'm looking for. But you still have to guide it. Notice I put here are the beats, and I put those right here. Now I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to send this forward. Better yet, why don't I go up to the top and show you what you can do? Might not let me until I finish. I was in a class the other day and chat actually went down. And I found that if I go back in and I copy everything, I can actually take all of my chat, copy it, and send it straight into Claude. So let this finish. The rhythmic sound of fists meeting leather fills the room. Now it is writing it in present. And did I specify what tense I want? If I did not specify a tense, then I would need to go back in and specify. So here's one of the things that you need to be careful of. If you don't specify whether it is your first person or third person or past or present tense, the LLM is going to spit out whatever tense it thinks that you're looking for. Now, keep in mind, I had a whole conversation with this LLM, and I told it that I wanted it to be third limited, and I was looking at past as being the suggestion. But again, if you don't continuously direct it, then you may not get what you're looking for. So in your template, you can always specify what perspective you want first or third. You can also dictate whether you want present or past tense. And the reason you want to do that is because if you don't indicate that, when I go in to do the next 2 beats, what happens if they're in past tense or the LLM decides that it wants to write in third person on one, but yet it writes in first person on the next set of beats? So keep that in mind. Now, I don't feel that this is robust enough. So what I could do is tell it to focus on number 1 and revise that and give me more vivid, detailed content. So let's see what it does now. So it's still going to give me a rundown of what's in there. Now it should give me the information on my body of work. Now, if I want it to start out with action or dialogue, I can stipulate that here. Once this finishes, though, I want to show you the difference in the prose between here and whenever you are inside of Claude, and then we can wrap this up. Now, I can ask it to flesh this out further, and I can ask it to give me more details. And it can do okay, but you really have to prompt it to get it started in GPT-4. You notice that you've got some dialogue now in number 2. Remember, this is just the first 2 beats. Now, when I combine those 2, this is my whole stride right here of my first 2 beats. I have a total of 14 that I'm going to be going through. So let's go ahead and take a look at everything. I'm going to want to play with this. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to take it all the way up to the top. I find that if I start all the way up at the top with my very first item and then come all the way down, I now know that everything is highlighted just like that. I'm going to copy this, and now I'm going to take that into Claude. I'm going to go in and get a brand new one. Let's get a new page. Let's plug that in. That is my whole chat. Now let's go back into chat, and the same information that I gave this LLM here that says to write this content, and it gave me 1 and 2. I'm going to take that same content from right here, and I'm going to ask it to write 1 and 2. Follow all template instructions and write the first 2 beats. This time, let's say, go ahead and do it third. See, and we're going to say the pro tag, past tense, starting with beat 1, and let it go. Now, sometimes the first content that comes out can be like little bitty tiny paragraphs, and then you just ask it to write it more vivid, or you tell it that it's not enough. Sometimes it'll write it out longer. This is starting in her apartment. Now, to me, this is too vague. It is going beyond, and it's doing 3. Let's see what it's going to do here. Looks like the LLM is repeating right here. Leland, can you check to see if Claude is having any outages right now?
Sure, checking.
Let's go back and see.
Claude is up for me, and I'm not seeing any outages.
Okay.
Yeah. He's telling me he's working properly. He's helpful, harmless, and honest.
I don't know about honest sometimes, but harmless, I guess so. And write only the first 2 beats of chapter 1. Debatable. Like I said, you never know what you're going to get. Here are the first 2 beats. Now it looks like this is going to be really slim. So let's see what it's going to give us. Usually it's slim, and then it'll get a little bit longer. So let's see. What you gave me was far too slim for prose. What's thinking? Now, if you want more dialogue, then you would ask to have it revised and open with dialogue if you wanted more dialogue. Let's make it to a 1,500 word. Now, it won't do 1,500 words. One thing that I found with the LLMs, once you get it to go in the direction that you want it, it's easier to keep it on track, but you have to get it there first.
So, Mary, you're coming up on 2 hours, just FYI.
We're going to wrap it up here.
I'm not sure how long you want to go, but yeah, I'm loving it.
Yeah. Now, as you can see, it gave me quite a bit of information. Now, will I keep some of it? Sure. Will I keep all of it? Maybe not. To me, I feel that it is more active once she starts coming into the conversations. I really think there's something up with Claude because I've not had it go this far into a single beat. Have you seen that, Leland?
Well, I've seen Claude refuse to stop and just go off in all kinds of fun directions. And then I've also seen him refuse to start.
Then to keep going, you would just say, continue with beat 2, and then you would just ask it to follow the same format. Now, again, chances are it might only give you 400 or 500 one time. I've never seen it give me this many at one time. So that was new to me. And just so that it gave a total of 1,676 words.
I definitely had to give me much more. I've achievably gotten about somewhere around 2,300 words.
I think Cece got about 2,900, just under 3,000, but she asked for 4,000 or 5,000 and it gave her under. And usually I find that if I ask for, say, 3,000, it gives me 1,500. If I ask it, I generally get about half to 2/3 of what I asked for. So usually it's not above. But like you, yeah, I've gotten higher amounts.
Let's just face it, it just can't count.
It cannot count. But once you get it going, it will keep on riding like a little riding horse. Here's the pendant that's talked about in 2. Thoughts, questions? Oh, I am looking forward to the thriller tomorrow. So let me go ahead and grab this before all our content's moving there. And then we come back up to the top. And I'm going to grab this for you guys. Thank you for letting me share my process today, Leland. I appreciate it.
Oh, this was fantastic. We love this.
So at some point, I would love to get on with you, Leland, so that we can actually play around with Rexy and some of the word banging. I have some prompts that I've been putting together, and I would love to play with them in there. So maybe sometime you and I can hop on and play around with some of those.
Yep, sure, no problem. Or Elizabeth or Steph,
Definitely.
they do Rexy on a daily basis. So anytime you want to, you just ping us and we might be able to hop in and do something.
Y'all have a good evening, and thank you so much for having me here.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
I hope you found this tutorial helpful and that it's given you some great insight into maximizing the potential of this amazing tool. The best way to stay updated, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified as soon as the next video drops. Don't forget to join our AI Writers Connection community over on Discord. You'll find the link in the description below. It's a fantastic space for us to share our experiences, ideas, and help each other grow as writers in the AI era. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your fellow writers. Your support really makes a difference. Once again, I'm Marigold, and I want to thank you for being a part of this journey with me. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, keep writing, keep learning, and keep pushing those boundaries.